Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This is the PodCasterComedy cast. I'm Paul Stapfer. Today we're doing something a little different where we're interviewing the hosts. So today I will be interviewing my co-host, JoeKing. Everyone, welcome,
What's up, everybody?
JoeKing.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. Glad to be a guest here. And I'm just going to go out and say it. Our guest didn't show up, so we are interviewing each other. That's our backup.
Yeah.
So you can get to know us. It's actually, this could be a really good thing.
Yeah, I hope more guests don't show up.
I know, especially the boring ones. And I'm not going to lie, this was set to be a boring one.
Yeah.
So,
So we're gonna jack it up.
yeah, I think we're better off this way.
So, let me ask you, Joe. I've known you a long time, but I'm just, and we've talked about this, but why don't you tell me and the audience, how did this all start? Where did your journey in comedy begin?
Yeah, I guess we should maybe preface it by telling them that is what I do. For my main job, I'm a stand-up comic, tour all over. I've been doing it for somewhere around 25 years now. A little more maybe, because the years start to be meaningless.
Yes.
And you can see how successful I am with this podcast that our guest doesn't even show up to. This is the pinnacle of my career right now. So, yeah.
And I'm here.
But it is my passion, and I do like to think I'm good at it. How it started, there's two beginnings, if that makes sense. So I'll tell you the first time I ever tried comedy is an interesting story. It was in high school.
Okay.
And it was the high school talent show. I was always the class clown.
Okay.
Typical story. I like to say I was a big goof off in school. That was what I did best, was goof off. So I just went pro. But they had a talent show, and this was in my grade 12 year, and everybody was bugging me to go on stage. Like a lot of the kids in school were bugging me to try stand-up comedy.
Because you're so funny.
Because I was the class clown.
Yeah.
I'd make everybody laugh. So they wanted to see me do comedy. By me saying everybody, I meant a small group of my friends.
Yes, yes.
Kept encouraging me to do this. So I decided to try it. And this was just a couple days before the talent show that I made up my mind.
Okay.
So I had a couple days to come up with an act. I tried to write my 5-minute act for my 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I realized it wasn't very good at all. So I immediately went to the video store and I rented a Best of Gary Shandling tape.
I see where this is going.
And I took Gary's best jokes.
Oh, no!
So,
Good job.
So I started my career completely completely plagiarizing, like stealing. It was straight out of Gary Shandling's live act.
This act.
And then a little piece, which is a bit that I actually still do today, about root beer, where I talk about, I used to work at this place. I don't remember its name or anything, but its initials are A&W, and I had a pretty good job at A&W. They wanted me to be root beer, put on this costume, sat on the street corner, hand out coupons, flyers, and stuff, which was really good until one day, I don't know what happened, I just blacked right out. Well, the next thing I knew when I came to, I had this big dart sticking out of my ass and a tag on my freaking ear. And that was an original joke I wrote back then. That was the best one. The rest of them all sucked.
All sucked.
Not that was brilliance or anything. But anyway, so I'm doing Gary Shandling's joke. Gary Shandling had this joke about bunk beds. Okay. If you've ever seen his act, at least in the 80s, he had this joke about bunk beds, and basically, I won't go through the whole thing, but he's like, I recently fulfilled a lifelong dream. I finally got bunk beds. I always wanted bunk beds since I was a kid. So I get these bunk beds installed, and it's kind of funny because I had this young lady over, and she's like, well, let's go to bed. So we go, and when we get in the room, she said, what was it? Oh yeah, she said, I'll take the top. And I said, okay, just a minute, I'll go get the ladder. And she said, oh, you sure think a lot of yourself, don't you? It's a fairly innocent little joke.
Sure.
Like you can do it on primetime TV, but that's going to come into play in a big way. Because, so I go out the first night, and it was a typical talent show. It's just the parents,
Right.
a few students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of half full. Right? And this, there's a group that's doing air guitar kind of thing. There's the cheerleaders.
Someone swirling a baton.
Swirling baton. There's doing something, I think, to a Sheena Easton song or something like that. It was the 80s.
Yeah.
Or maybe Roxette.
Yeah.
Anyway, typical 80s high school talent show. Then I go out, and I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared at all until they announced my name, and I had to walk onto the stage. This is the only time I got real stage fright. Like my legs all of a sudden just went numb on me and went weak, and I was terrified, and I think it showed. But I did the act, and it got big laughs.
That's cool.
Because, well, I mean, it's fucking Gary Shanley.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Sorry, I should have sworn there. He's a great comic. He's one of the best of all time. So Gary got good laughs that day. But anyway, I end with the bunk beds joke, and everybody loved it. So it was the talk of the school the next day. Like this was on, and they considered it edgy, right?
Right.
And it was the talk of the school. Like this was huge, and I was like a superstar walking down the halls, and everything was great. And literally, at like, it had to be about 2:30, 3 o'clock, like the end of the next day, because the talent show was 2 nights.
Okay.
So there's the first night, which is like a preliminary type thing, and then finals or something.
Right.
The second night, right? For who will win. And I, of course, had moved on to the finals. But they called me into the principal's office. And so the principal and the vice principal and the AV guy, Mr. Headley, blah, 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 and the cool English teacher, Mr. Gray, who's like the really cool, laid-back English teacher that everybody loves, right?
Yeah.
We all had one of those. They're all sitting there, and he's pissed off. He's sitting in the corner. He's like, oh, and not at me, but at the rest of them, because they're telling me, okay, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't talk about this. Like they basically told me the whole act I can't do that night. They're like, you can't do this. You can't. It's all. You can't tell that bunk beds joke.
Please tell me you pivoted and did the 7 words you can't say.
We'll get there. So I went home and I quickly tried to write 5 minutes, and I wrote 5 minutes of shit.
Yeah.
5 minutes of crap. Like it was just thrown together. What I really should have done was just went and rented another tape. Andrew Dice Clay. It's the 80s. No, I should have just rented somebody else's.
Yeah.
That's a joke, by the way. That's the worst thing you can do. I've never done it since. That's the honest truth. But I get there. I'm doing the stuff. I wrote it myself. And, I'm just literally the second night, the place was packed. And students came. Like, they wanted to see this legendary act that had happened the night before. Literally, no exaggeration, the entire front row was the cheerleaders.
Oh, no.
And they're all sitting there in their fucking uniforms. And I'm trying to do my act, as they announced me. And it's different from the night before. And it's bombing. And it's going like crap. I swear to God, the cheerleaders start going, bunk beds! Bunk beds! Bunk beds! They're that's my agent. Tell them I'm busy. And they start cheering for bunk beds and everything.
Right.
Literally, which is blowing my mind. And so I remember vividly. I was like, "Okay, you want to get dirty? Let's get dirty." And I start telling the joke, and then they cut my sound off. Mr. Headley, the big strict AV teacher, comes out, right, and he puts his hand on my shoulder and drags me off stage.
No way.
The whole bit. It was a big controversy. Everybody in the audience is booing and for flipping out. In my head, they're like rioting, but no, they're just like, boo, boo, of course, the cool English teacher that I told you about, he comes walking up to me, Mr. Gray, and he's like, "Who cut your sound, man?" And I'm like, it was Headley. And he goes, "Asshole, I was hoping you'd do it. I was hoping you'd say fuck you and do it anyway. Good for you, man."
Wow.
The ex-hippie, you know.
Yeah. Stick it to the man.
So that was the first time I ever did stand-up.
Cool.
And I never thought of it as a career. Never thought of it again after that, you know. But it did make me kind of a legendary funny guy at the school. It did wonders for my popularity.
Gotcha.
I was always well liked, but that made me actually popular.
Okay.
Which was really cool.
So then how did that transform into you actually going to like an open mic or going on a stage outside of school?
What would happen in my life, because I was a very delusional young man, shortly after that incident, I would end up watching a movie called The Doors by Oliver Stone, which I think came out about 1990.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then becoming obsessed with Jim Morrison and The Doors, and read the book. No One Here Gets Out Alive, the whole bit. Anyhow, I somehow convinced myself that I was like the reincarnation of Jim Morrison. You know?
I think everyone at that age did.
Yeah,
when they discovered The Doors.
I had discovered basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I'd grown my hair really long, leather jacket, you know, all my friends were rockers, and we basically looked like Wayne's World's crew kind of thing, right? It's the closest thing I can compare it to. And so comedy wasn't even a thought, right?
Yep.
I was convinced I was going to be a rock star, and I was going to be this super musician. I was right into music and bands and everything.
Did you play any instruments?
No, that's the thing. I was totally convinced that I was going to be a rock star and I was going to show them all, but I didn't play a single instrument, and I have zero talent singing. Like I would sing. I thought I was going to be the front man, you know.
You were just going to walk in.
I'd sing in front of my friends, and they're just like, "You are awful. Like you're horrible and terribly tone deaf," you know. And I had no understanding of tones. I couldn't tell the difference, you know. When my buddy, like, I hung out with musicians, and they were really good musicians, and I was in that circle all the time.
So you were a rock star by osmosis.
Yeah, I was convinced, but yet none of them would let me front their band or anything like that. They were looking for real musicians, right? Really trying to make it. One of them ended up, my best friend, he was a drummer, really good drummer, ended up joining Harlot's Web, a band called Harlot's Web out of Vancouver, that had some success, you know, in the hair metal days kind of thing. But yeah, I was convinced I was going to be a rock star. Was doing that. So jump ahead a few years later, I never thought of comedy. But in retrospect, comedy, I wasn't good enough to do music, but comedy was the closest thing I could get to that lifestyle. And for me, it wasn't necessarily about the music, it was about the lifestyle, it was about the touring and, you know, being a rock star kind of thing, more so than making great music. And
that's just the life.
Yeah, and that's the biggest mistake you can make right there. You know, when you're not in it to make great music, you're a pretender, you're a poser, you're a wannabe. And that's what it was, really. I said I love everybody. But make sure you subscribe,
Like,
to the channel.
follow, ding the bell.
Hit that like button. It only takes a second. It makes a huge difference to us. It only takes you a second. Doesn't cost anything. Get the notifications and check out our Patreon at Patreon/Entertainment Talent. You can find longer interviews. You can get more of the same content that you just seen. We're giving you a taste here free, but there's more that you can see. So